This is a video about Industry Graph. In particular, I am going to be giving you some illustrations of how Industry Graph works to deliver intelligence and anticipation to business and financial decision makers. I am James Andrus, President and Technical Founder of News Patterns. Industry Graph knows quite a bit about the interests of our users before she tells us who she's investing in or before he tells us who he's competing against. We can do this because interests are tied to competition, and competition is defined by fundamental archetypical forces. To anticipate the financial and business interests of our users, Industry Graph first starts with the right context. And that context is based on the archetypes of competition as defined by Michael Porter of the Harvard Business School. The Porter competitive model looks at competitors, suppliers, buyers, entrants, and substitutes as the key forces that drive marketplaces and drive industries. Moving beyond the Porter competitive force model, interesting industries have many competitors, many buyers, many suppliers, and many potential entrants and many potential substitutes. Business and financial interests are driven by these forces and the connections that they have amongst each other and their changes over time. The mathematics of the competitive environment become apparent when one considers that each competitive force can be connected with another competitive force. In our example here, since we have 15 competitive forces of buyers, suppliers, entrants, and substitutes, we have over 105 connections that can be considered as part of the Industry Graph discovery. Even in a small industry of 15 competitive forces, things can quickly become complicated. Yet amongst all this complexity, there is a great opportunity to discover interesting information with the News Patterns algorithms. As news and social media change, so too do the topics of competitive forces and the connections amongst them. Financial and business decision makers are of course seeking hourly and daily news to better understand the changes in their financial position or their competitive marketplaces. With news and social media as an input, news patterning algorithms go about searching for interesting topics and interesting connections amongst the topics. A typical industry can consume billions of pattern-seeking operations on a daily basis. The goal of Industry Graph discovery is not to report on every potential connection and every potential topic to its client users. Rather, Industry Graph is designed to be reporting on what might be interesting or what might be relevant out of a large universe of possibilities, possible connections, possible relevant topics, and possible trends within a competitive industry. As interesting patterns, trends, topics, and connections are identified, they are reported as discoveries back to our client users. As can be seen here, Competitor 2 and Competitor 3 have interesting information about them. Same thing with Buyer Number 1 and Supplier Number 1. These competitive force topics and connections are being highlighted amongst a population of 100 or more possibilities. There are many examples of the discoveries that Industry Graph can deliver to its clients. These include emerging competitors, emerging substitutes, changing buyer trends, dissipating competitors, strengthening of competitor-buyer relationships, and many more. All of these discoveries can turn into a significant competitive advantage for our clients. In fact, as competitive patterns become more entrenched, the actual shape of the Industry Graph begins to morph. It begins to reflect the fact that the prominent competitors, buyers, suppliers, etc. occupy the center of a radar space. An actual radar within the Industry Graph looks something like this. This is the transportation energy industry, which is a composite of several granular industry definitions. Toward the center of this radar, the topics of Toyota efficiency, electric vehicles, hybrids, etc. are prominent. The positions of these competitive forces are driven by changing news and social media. The discoveries and anticipations enabled by Industry Graph are based on fundamental archetypes of competition. These archetypes include buyers, suppliers, competitors, entrants, and substitutes. The interactions of these forces and movements over time, as driven by news and social media, drive the discoveries that alert our clients and users to what might be interesting to them. In summary, I've been able to share a couple of illustrations of how Industry Graph discovers interesting business and financial information for its users. If you are interested in more information about Industry Graph, please go to newspatterns.com or industrybuildingblocks.com. Thank you for your attention.